guys in my position were just out of high school, just graduated from high school, and we knew the war was on. The war started a couple months, 6 months before we graduated in June. It was started in December. And we knew we were going to go, because all the guys were going. It wasn't like today where just the guys that want to go, and the rest of the guys stay back and go to college or whatever. But we all knew that we had to go, and because our country was in deep trouble. And so we made up our mind, hey, let's do it, and we'll get over it. We were so mad at the country of Japan for the Pearl Harbor business that we thought, let's get in there and really whip some, you know what, you know. So that's how we all felt. I don't think there's any hardships or any guys that were mad about it. And we felt, let's do it. And we didn't even feel that, excuse me, that it was our duty. We figured, hey, our country's been killed. Let's do some killing ourselves. That's what we felt. So we thought nothing about it. Let's get in there and get it done. Well, there were 4 of us kids in the family. Mother, father, 4 kids. Now the 2 younger ones were little teenagers. And I had an older brother, a couple years older than I was. I was just that was the time. And 18, I should say that. And my older brother was working at Curtis, depending job for him, what he was doing. But I was just out of high school, so I didn't have any expertise to try to think, oh, maybe I can get out of it. But I didn't want to get out of it anyway. You know, we felt that, hey, we better get together and get something done. Our country's going down the tubes. I got a notice I should report to this church, maybe 8 or 10 blocks away from where I lived, and where I lived in the city of Buffalo, out the east side near Chickawaga. We were supposed to report for duty there, and be sure that you're back, and your wallet in your pocket with a couple dollars, and away you went. And then they sent us to Fort Niagara, up in Niagara County, and for the basic get-together. And then I think at that time, the Army was forming an airborne division, the 17th Airborne Division down North Carolina, and for mostly glider troops, guys riding gliders, and along with paratroopers. And we had really no choice about what we're going to do. They asked what you wanted to do. You want to go in the Army or the Navy? Or it wasn't in the Air Force then, it was the Air Corps, part of the Army. And I said, well, I think the Army's all right. So it was okay with me. So, and we were shipped down to North Carolina and to form the 17th Airborne Division. And that's the way it started. And I was down there for a full year practically. Well, we were all supposed to act like soldiers, which we weren't. We had to learn how to be soldiers, you know, like in the morning, just right after dawn, they would be reveille, and they would blow the bugle, and you're in bed sleeping soundly. You're not used to getting up at dawn, you know, so you had to get out of bed and get your clothes on quick, and you put your leggings on, and your shoes, and your cap and your hat, and be out standing in parade in a formation within a couple of minutes. And we weren't used to that, you know, the young guys. Like can you imagine you doing that now, you know? Get out of here. Yeah. But we did it, and it was hard to get used to that. But once we started getting into it and finding out that we were part of this elite unit that they were forming down there, so we got, and we looked forward to it after a while. It wasn't a big problem. It was, hey, let's get out there and do it, you know? And then sometimes they'd call us out for an overnight walk, 24 hours, you're on the road. And we get out and full pack on our back and steel helmets were heavy. Your head would sway until you got used to it. But we got out and get on the road, we'd be out, you walk about 15 minutes, so sometimes you'd even jog. And then they'd give you a 10-minute break. So, you know, whoever had cigarettes smoked, and that was a big thing in them days, you know, but not like today. And but then we get up and keep going, you know, and then we finally get back at the camp, and the next morning, overnight, it was overnight, we got back the next morning, and tired as a devil, You don't go to bed. No, you gotta start the new day. You're up on your feet going. And it was tough, but hey, everybody was doing it, and we thought nothing about it after a while. It took a couple months, but we got used to it. Well, after we were in there a while, we were all issued our firearm. And for us, we were issued a carbine, which is a small rifle. It's still 30 caliber. It was a big caliber, but it wasn't a big M1 rifle. It was a small, it was instead of the 45 pistol, which they did away with pretty much except for officers, but they gave us the carbines to carry. And we got used to that too, carried it. And after a while, they gave us the ones instead of the full wooden stock on it, they gave us the folding stock that were more for airborne troops, where you had to get everything compact.
Right.
And so we got used to that. After a while, you got to know your rifle, and you went to the firing range, and you practiced, and you got pretty good at it, and you took pride in that. You're maybe better than the other guys, and not that you wanted to knock the other guys down, but everybody was trying to do their best because we felt our country is at stake. Let's do the best we can while we're here. That would be an airborne division, like they have paratroopers. They jump out of planes, and then we have one regiment of paratroopers and 2 regiments of glider troops, which the guys rode in these little flimsy gliders, kind of a paper thing, I don't see how they were, but they were towed off the ground by other airplanes. And you could think about it, maybe 8 or 10 guys just sitting there, hoping the thing came down in one piece. But that's what we were in. There wasn't a choice. We were told to do that, And but then the outfit I was in was an anti-tank, anti-aircraft battalion. We had three batteries of anti-aircraft guys and 3 batteries of anti-tank. Our job was to protect the rest of the division against airplanes coming in with the enemy and tanks coming in. But we were so outgunned. We got better overseas. We got better weapons at the time. But we did the best we could. Well, when we were in the States, we'd go on maneuvers, and we slept outside in tents all the time. Little pup tents, not big tents. You had one half of a tent, and your buddy had the other half. And you both each had a pole from each end, and the ropes hold it down. And it was really good living, and especially when it's raining, and the field got muddy. Everything was muddy, wet. We were soaking wet, and it was cold down, and we were in Tennessee maneuvers at the time. And it wasn't very pleasant. But there again, that was part of the game. We did it. We were sent over. We left. Okay, I was in that 17th Airborne Division, and after maneuvers in Tennessee, this other outfit was in the same Camp Forest, Tennessee, and that was called the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. And they needed a guy with my so-called ability. For 18 years old, how much ability do you have? But I was in operations, non-commissioned, and this other outfit in town was going overseas quicker than our airborne division was, and so they needed a guy with my expertise, and they just transferred me right out and left them with my buddies that I knew all the time, and I went to this other 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. And what they had rubber tanks, rubber things, decoys, and we trained with them. And when we went overseas, then we had a whole battalion of these guys with big trucks hauling these rubber tanks around. They folded up like a card table almost, and then they put a pressure to it and it blew up like a full-size tank. And that was supposed to fool the Germans, the enemy. And the real office would move out some area, and we would move in, blowing our tanks up, and the real tanks would pull out and go further on and cross the river somewhere else, and we'd kind of decoy for them. That's what we were. It was interesting.
You mentioned that you were taken away from your original people. How was that change? Was it sudden or obviously sudden? But was it a bad change or was?
Well, I didn't like it because when you're when you go in, the same as maybe you guys in high school, you're in a certain class with your buddies and that, and all of a sudden somebody comes along and says, "Well, we're going to pull you out of here and send you over to Elma." In that group, you know, you got to meet new friends and that. You wouldn't be too happy. You know, you say, hey, why have I got to do this? But they said, hey, that's what it's going to be. So you did it. And I went to the chaplain and whatever else I could find, say, hey, can you get me back out of that outfit and get me back to my original outfit, the guys I knew? But they couldn't do it, because that's, when the orders come down, that's it. You're gone. I should probably say that things are a lot better once we got overseas than they were in the States during maneuvers, because they really, in the States, they really threw it to you. You know, you're in the mud and you know, oh, you hate yourself to get up in the morning. But once you get overseas, they're going to great lengths to kind of give you some good barracks to stay in. But once we went across the Channel to France, right after, shortly about a month after D-Day, then we were in the field all the time. But it was the summertime, and it wasn't too bad for a while. We would sleep in the ground. You have to dig a trench to sleep in, you know, but you got used to that too. I shouldn't complain about it because you got used to it. It's like everywhere else you go in your life, you get to know people, and you kind of pick and choose the ones that you think are kind of like you, to think like you do, and that, and then them are the guys you buddy around with. And that's what I did. I picked some guys with my own liking and about the same rank I was, corporal, technician, 5th grade. And all through the overseas time, if we had going to town or something, we'd go with the same guys. You're buddies, you know. And the other guys you didn't pay much attention to, you know. They had their buddies, they went their own way. And there wasn't too much entertainment. Once we got organized overseas, of course we all had baseball gloves and bats and balls, and whenever we could, we'd get a baseball game going. A lot of times the enlisted men, corporals and sergeants, against the officers. And we always beat them. We were younger, you know. We could swing better, you know, run faster. And but then we practically always look for something to do while you're off hours, because you know what else are you going to do? If there's a little town nearby, you walk into town and bum around, see the people that live there, and try to make friends with them and talk to them. But then mostly you're kind of hung with your buddies. Of course, in France, we were the liberators, you know. We were kicking the Germans out, and all the people were there, they were crazy for us. And they gave us this money, because money was a problem, because after the Germans took over, the French francs were nothing, you know, and all that German marks, and then we kicked the Germans out, the marks were no good. So they gave us this, we call it funny money, these little pieces of little squares of, this would be a $1 bill and the $5 bill and the $10. They all looked the same, you know, and we couldn't pass them back. Nobody wanted them, you know. What good were they? But that's how we were paid. Every month we'd stand in line to get our pay, and they give us this funny money, and what do we do with it, you know? But then they'd have chocolate bars, cigarettes, pipe tobacco, and that for the guys. We'd use it for that. But it was comical. And one thing about when we first landed overseas in France from England across the Channel, and it was utter devastation all over. It's just, I mean, there was dead animals in the field, laying in the field, and the trees were just strung with wires. Our communication guys, once they get going, they just, one of these big round drums of wire, of cable they call it, and off the back of the truck, and the guys with big long poles sticking the wires up in the trees as they went forward, so they got keep communications with each other, you know. Whatever happened to all this wire after the war, I got no idea. It must have filled truck after truck full of just the plain wire. But it was interesting to see that when we first went over. You get a pass, like an overnight pass, if there's a nice sized town, like when we got near Paris, of course we were all anxious to get out and get into Paris and see ooh la la, you know. And they give us an overnight pass, a little ticket you had that you could keep, and in case the MPs would want to know, you know, are you legal here, or you got a pass, or we'd show it to them. But we'd bum around town, we'd up the Eiffel Tower and Champs-Élysées, and just walk around. Nothing much to do, you know, people all over the place. But we enjoyed it. There was something different, you know, and we're seeing history made, you know. It was a day-to-day thing, and now when I think back now, of course, this coming November I'll be 90. That's years old, you know. But years ago when I was a bit younger, I said, why didn't I keep better records of what we were doing, where we went, and besides a little article that I did kind of from memory that I wrote. And but I wish I could have, maybe some of the little older guys, a little more mature, kept better records of what they're doing, where they're going, and for their own future interest, you know, because you forget, you know, as time goes on, man, things kind of slip out of your mind. But I wish I could have kept better track of what I was doing. But when you're 18, 19 years old, that's the last thing on your mind, you know. You can tell me that. Like I would write letters home, and I got a big stack my mother kept. We lived in Buffalo, and she kept all my letters, and she gave them to me later on. And but I would say tell her where I was and what I was doing. But if you start mentioning places, and that, it would be cut out of your letter. The officers would censor it. And you take a razor blade and cut that part out. We said, I just visited, and there'd be a big hole in your letter where they'd cut the name out where you were, because they had to do that. I understood that, but that's what did. In fact, once I got with this 23rd Headquarters Special Troops with the dummy tanks and that, I was assigned to ride with this Lieutenant Colonel. His main field of expertise was artillery. Okay, and he had a driver, and he rode the Jeep, and he always wanted me to sit in the back seat, turning around with my carbine, riding through towns in case there would be snipers, thinking that's what his idea was. I didn't want any snipers up in the windows shooting at me in the back. I'll have you turn around, and if you see something, start shooting, you know, no questions asked. But I spent most of my time going through Europe, all through France and Belgium, Holland, with this officer, and ride with him. And of course, he come to some place, and we're going to be there overnight. He'd get out and pick a place where he wanted the foxhole dug, and that'd be my job. Get my little shovel and my pick, and dig the foxhole for him and his driver, because they were on the road, and for myself. And then when he come back, we'd spend the night sleeping in the ground, and then next day we'd take off in the Jeep and go somewhere else. They were all pretty much the same when you're 18, 19 years old, you know. How much different are they? The girls would be different. This one's cuter than that one, you know. How do you know, what nationality she is? But I didn't have any problem with any of the countries, France or Belgium, they're all pretty much the same. And even when we got in Germany, once the people understood that we're coming through and the German army is getting pushed back, that they figured, hey, it's to our advantage to be friendly with these guys. What do we got to lose, you know? And they were friendly, very friendly. And I got to know some nice people in all them countries. I'd write letters to them after the war when I was home. Like a girl in England, I used to borrow a bike from the so-called motor pool, and she lives in a farmhouse about a mile from where we were. And I'd ride up with my bike, and she'd come out with her bike. We'd just ride up and down the roads and go into town. We were close to that city in England called Stratford-on-Avon, where Shakespeare supposedly was. And we go in there in the bars, and of course, me being a GI, we always had a little bit more money than some of the British soldiers. You know, they said we were overpaid, oversexed and overpaid. That's what they called us, you know. But we had enough money we could buy a couple of drinks at the bar. But I got to know a lot of nice people. I even thought about maybe bringing one of them back, you know. get married, you know, because I had no girls over here. I was so young, I didn't have time for that before I went in the Army, but it never worked out. Oh yeah, we were in the Army, yeah. I was with this 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, I call it. That's where we had the rubber tanks and the rubber artillery pieces and that. And I was with them all through the whole war.
If you had to say, what would be the favorite part of your job that you had? Did you have a favorite?
I liked the idea that I could ride with our colonel and his driver and travel all over. Well, we got to see things that I wouldn't normally see with the other guys, you know. I'd be riding in the back of the Jeep and we'd go one town after another. And one time we were riding down this little kind of a country road and past a farmhouse and the chicken rang out, and the Jeep hit the chicken. It flew up in the air and down. And the colonel says, he called his driver Smokey. They're both from Arkansas. He said, "Hold it, Smokey, stop here." And so he called me, "Corporal, get out and grab that chicken." And I jumped out of the Jeep, went back, the chicken was flopping on the road, and I grabbed him by the feet and jumped back in the Jeep and put him on the floor, put my head on to hold him down. And we took him back to the camp, and we thought we were going to all share on this chicken dinner. The colonel had it. We didn't get a taste of it, you know. Yeah. But that's one of the things, kind of funny things that happen. But I enjoyed doing it. It was better than some of the other guys that never got out. At least I got a chance to get out and see the countryside, see the towns and the villages. It was nice. That happened all the time over there. After a while, you saw that stuff, and you got used to it. You know, tomorrow's another day. You know? When I was in the airborne, that was when I first went in. Back in the States, and I was with them until Tennessee maneuvers, and then transferred me. But it was stressful. I mean, we had to learn how to load vehicle Jeeps into these gliders, you call that. You know, you ever see one of them gliders? They're just sticks and canvas stretched over them, and no motors, and the pilot and the co-pilot sat up in front with one steering wheel. They'd pass back and forth, and a bunch of guys sat in the back, or else a Jeep and a couple guys, and we had to learn how to load this during maneuvers, you know, how to load the vehicles and that. And they're hollering and shouting at us all the time, and it kind of live on your nerves, but we figured, hey, that's what we're here for. Well, the only thing I got was the good conduct. Of course, if you weren't caught trying to desert the place or something, then you got the good conduct. If you didn't get into trouble, you know. And the other was the campaigns. That's starting with Normandy and then northern France. That was in a certain area. If some guy was in that area during that time period, well, then you suppose he got a so-called battle star for being in that area at that time. Like in Normandy, where that was the beginning of it, for D-Day on. Well, we weren't there on D-Day. We were there shortly after, but maybe from Normandy, from the D-Day up until maybe August or so, they call that Normandy campaign, and you got, you know, battle stars from that. But as far as anything other medals, I was never wounded. You know, I cut myself at that, but the enemy didn't do it, you know. And I never had any other accidents and no Purple Hearts, nothing. So I got there like 99% of the other guys over there. They were like me, you know, you're there to do a job, and you did it to the best of your ability, and you didn't ask for anything else. No special treatments. We were in Germany, and we were moved in this little town called Eider Oberstein, and that was a nice little town. It was a twin town, something like maybe Tonawanda, North Tonawanda, kind of joining, but very small townish, not like a big city. And but they escaped the war pretty good. They weren't demolished like some of the big cities were. And the houses were still there, and the people were out. And it was getting near the end of the war, and everything was kind of getting happy. You know, people were joking and laughing, and even the people in Germany, you know, they're coming out of their houses, and they see us marching down the street, and they smile, you know. And not that they were happy that their country was losing the war, but I think they were happy that we were there instead of the Russians. think that was a big thing for him. So, but that was, I'd say that's what we did. It was happy times near the end of the war. No, of course we all had our like identification, like a bracelet you call it, around your wrist. And I got it from when I come home. One of my buddies, his father, worked in a place, engraving, where they did that. And I would always wear that. But it wasn't a good luck charm or anything. I didn't believe in that. You, of course, you had your dog tags around your neck all the time. And but I wouldn't say that I had any good luck charms, you know. I sit down at night before I go to bed, hold it in my hand, you know. I didn't do that stuff.
Right.
Maybe some guys did, I don't know, but not me. Yeah, when I got home, I ran into some of the guys. One of the guys who were up at Pine Camp, New York. And I ran into one of the guys from the 17th Airborne I was with, and he's going to school up there. And we were still there. The war wasn't over yet, but I was there and I saw him, and we go into town, meet other guys from my old division. I see him. In fact, when I was overseas, my older brother finally got drafted, and he was overseas with an engineering outfit, and I heard from my letters from home that where he was located, and we got close to that one time, and I wanted to try to make contact with him, but I never could, because you didn't have the liberty just to do things what you wanted to do. You had to follow routines, you know. And so I never could do that. That was a shame, though, because I would have enjoyed running into my brother, you know, overseas. But I never could. I think we were open. I think once you've been in about 6 months, and you got through basic training, where a lot of that stuff is drummed into you, you know. And you did things, you respected officers. They had to have it that way. You couldn't have just a bunch of guys doing what they feel like doing, you know. Maybe we could have won the war quicker if we had done that, but that's not up for me to say. But we had officers, and we had to respect them, and everything was yes sir, no sir, that kind of stuff, you know. But we didn't do it out of resentment. We did it because we kind of respected the guy for what he was worth, you
know. After the war, after you came back home, I should say.
Oh, I went to school for a couple of years. Of course, all the guys were to come back, and when I was in high school, I was in Buffalo, a place called Seneca Vocational High School, and vocational high schools got one or two of them now. Burgard, maybe Emerson are still there, but I went to Seneca, where I was interested in photography from a young kid on, and when you went to a vocational high school, half the day was English, math, history, that kind of stuff, and the other half was your trade that you picked. So they had regular photo studios here in the school, and we were assigned regular curriculum we had to follow through the 4 years. You know, you had to learn how to shoot portraits. They had a little studio there, you did that. Then they gave you cameras to go out and wander around the neighborhood and try to pick out something interesting to take, you know, and that's what we did. And I got out of high school with that vocational school diploma, and I tried to follow that up in my working years, and I did. I got a job at this photo studio in East Aurora, downtown, right down next to the, you know where that car place is now, Elm Street, Main Street, the cars, they do oil changes and that. It's close to that, up on the corner. But it was a studio there, and I went to work there for the people, and it was a photography studio. And I went there for a while, and then I got a chance. I heard about this company called Cornell Aeronautical Laboratory on Genesee Street in Chickawaga. And I heard that they were looking for a technician type, which I was considered a technician. And so I left there and went into Buffalo, and I worked there for about 30 years until I retired. And I did photography there, and worked up in a wind tunnel, running high-speed motion picture cameras, stopping action, you know, that kind of stuff. It was interesting. I enjoyed it. I think when I was overseas, I wasn't like I was like in the infantry under fire all the time, where your nerves are right on edge, you know. There were times when we were, like when our captain was killed, and naturally you're excited, concerned, but it wasn't a daily routine. You know, there were a lot of days where just like now, you know, you do what you got to do, and so when I came home, I wasn't stressed out like a lot of the guys were. You know, you're afraid of everything, and of course my sister, my younger sister, and my mother, used to say that sometimes when an airplane would come over, but we lived in Buffalo, but not too far from that Buffalo airport there out our ways, and a plane would come over kind of low. They said I would jump down on the floor and try to hide. You thinking it was an enemy aircraft coming? I said, I don't remember that kind of stuff, but if you say I did that, okay. But I got over that. Oh, I had a younger sister, 10 years younger than me, and then a younger brother, 4 years younger than her. So when I come back, my youngest brother was just a little kid, and my sister was about 10 years old. I was about 21 when I got. I was discharged from the Army on my 21st birthday. Can you believe that?
That's a birthday present.
Yeah, like that birthday present. Down in Mississippi, Camp Shelby, Mississippi, and they give you a couple $100. Said, okay, goodbye. And that was it. 2.5 years out of my life gone, you know. But yeah, I didn't mind it. I always wanted to. In fact, it was maybe a couple years ago, I got a phone call from some guy that was in his 23rd headquarters, which I ended up in. And he says that we're going to have a reunion out in Montana someplace where one of them lived, you know. I said, geez, and my wife, she was getting along in years and she was not too good. I says, boy, I love to come and see you guys, but I can't leave my wife. I can't just, you know, jump in an airplane and go out to Montana for a week, you know. I couldn't do that, so that was the only reunion I heard about. I'd have loved to have been there, but can't do it. I try to pick out the highlights in that little article I wrote.
Okay.
And Bobby, you could, there's a lot of the stuff I mentioned here again tonight, while we're in there. And as I think about it now, I can sit and think while I'm sitting home watching TV, having my happy hour, my one happy hour every day, no more than one. And I think back to some of the other things that happened to me that I should make a note of that, right? But hey, I'm 90 years old. Why worry about it now, you know? Maybe when I was 40 or 50, I should have maybe paid more attention to that and done more things then, but I don't regret it.